if you can tell me your name and how you spell it and who you are, first of all.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Rory Harding, Nature Recovery Manager at Kent Wildlife Trust. And I've been working with the Trust since 2019. And a big part of my role is working with farmers and land managers across the county to see what kind of nature-friendly farming we can have implemented.
Yeah. Because it's really crucial, isn't it? It's pointless talking about having more wildlife in the countryside if you don't have a good relationship with the people who own most of the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. So I work with a number of farm cluster officers at the Trust, and it's all about building relationships through groups, farm cluster groups, building relationships with farmers so that we can really get to know their individual farms and the wider landscapes in which those sit, and then help them and work with them and learn from them ourselves as to how their food production and their farming businesses can become more nature friendly.
Okay, so let's talk about what a farming cluster is, first of all. What is a farming cluster?
So a farm cluster group, it's basically just a group of farmers coming together at a local geographic scale, coming together to do environmental actions. But the idea is that an individual farmer acting alone to try and implement activities for nature might not be able to achieve as much as they can as a group. So a single pond that's turtle dove friendly, that's created by one farmer, may not be enough to actually attract and help a turtle dove raise a family nearby, whereas a number of farmers working together to establish several ponds that are turtle dove friendly is actually going to be, that's working at a landscape scale, that's going to provide the habitat and the resource that those birds need. So it's all about creating opportunities for nature at scale, not just on a one farm at a time basis.
And when we talk about a cluster, how many farms do you need to make a cluster? One or two? A dozen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, every farm cluster group is unique and is based sort of on the local characteristics of that area, but they can range from 7 farmers being involved to 30 or even 60 farmers.
Wow.
One farm cluster group, in fact, the farm cluster group we're part of that we work with here in the Upper Belt catchment is coming on to sort of 30 members, and they're actually very close to another farm cluster group, the Marden farmers, and that scale is starting to create a super cluster, where the farm cluster groups can communicate between each other, and we're actually looking at a huge landscape of the low weald that can be improved for nature with farming at the same time.
And so what kind of differences then are you starting to see by working in this way?
Well, it's fantastic to be here at Green Farm today, and I remember meeting Martin in 2019, and that was the start of his journey working with Kent Wildlife Trust through the cluster, and to see the changes he's made in the way he's farming based on the relationships he's built with other farmers and the knowledge he's gained from different experts that have been brought in to talk to the cluster. It's fantastic to see sort of the grass growing so long and providing that habitat for different butterflies to feed and for their larvae, and the mob grazing approach, which is really regenerating the soil. You can see the change in the land, over the last few years.
I mean, you got quite excited. We were looking at a cowpat earlier on, and there was a lot of life going on.
Oh, there's a lot to be excited about in a cowpat. I mean, the cowpats at Green Farm are absolutely buzzing with life. There's flies coming in of all different species, and there's also, crucially, dung beetles. And we saw just multiple dung beetles crawling around that cowpat, recycling the nutrients there, and they're a really important sign of healthy soil and of healthy insect life.
And this is the point, isn't it? That the way that the farmers choose to medicate their cattle, the way that they choose to feed their cattle and sheep, we've got sheep behind us here, that has a big impact in itself.
Yeah, it's the sort of regenerative approach to farming isn't just about the way it's grazed. It incorporates this whole holistic approach to the way the livestock are managed or the arable land is managed.
I mean, there will be farmers who are listening to this who will be farming commercially, intensively. They've been doing it that way for a long time, and they'll be saying, well, this is all very well, this kind of nice wildlifey stuff, but I've got to make a living. I've got to run this as a business. What do you say to them?
Well, I think it's an incredibly valid question, and taking a sort of a regenerative approach to farming and allowing encouraging nature into the landscape it doesn't have to take away from those profit margins. In fact, it could potentially increase them, but it's not always easy, and it does require a change in mindset and a change in methodology. So we want to facilitate that change, and we realise it's going to be a gradual process for many people, and we're learning at the same time. So we don't have all the answers, but it's being demonstrated on other farms that these changes are possible, and here is a great case in point. Martin's reduced his vet's bills because his cows are so healthy, and the gut bacteria that they have is not impacted by too much ivermectin or use of those wormers, and but it is a process that farmers need to go through.
Right, okay, but it is possible to do both. You can have some wildlife and farm profitably at the same time.
It's definitely possible, and at Kent Wildlife Trust we're really keen to find those examples, help farmers showcase the amazing work they're doing to produce food and producing a fantastic environment for wildlife.
And what have you made of just wandering around Green Farm today? It's a glorious day.
It's a glorious day, and it's been amazing to watch the house martins collecting mud from the newly created Great Crested Newt Pond. It's been lovely walking through the meadows, seeing the meadow browns flush from under our feet. It's been lovely to see the livestock in this really long grass rather than on really short turf, which is just buzzing with life as they swish through it. So it's lovely to be here.
It's great, isn't it?